Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. And yeah, this is the next video in our React series. So today we are talking about state and events, and this is actually the moment your components stop just sitting there and actually start responding to what the user does. So before we jump into the new topic, let us quickly look at where we left off in the last video. So if you remember in the second video, we built a reusable component. We passed data into it using props and we understood one-way data flow. That is, data always moves from parent to child. And if in any case you missed the second video, I am dropping the link in description. Please make sure you watch that video first. So in the second video, if you noticed, there was a limitation with props, and it was that props can never change themselves. Okay, so the data we pass in is static. It means we just display the data we pass through props. It is read only, and we cannot perform, update, any actions. Like the value doesn't react to anything on its own. So that is the gap we are closing today. Okay. So today, to fix that limitation, we are going to learn about state. And to understand it better, you obviously might have used many apps and websites, right? And you know that they are never static in real life. Every app has parts you interact with, and those parts update or change right in front of you. To understand it better, let's assume a scenario. So let's say your salary just got credited and you decide to treat yourself and buy a top online. Okay, so you go to your favorite shopping website, you pick a top you like and add it to your cart. Now your younger sibling is also sitting next to you. She sees the top and obviously wants one too. So you add a second one to the cart, and now what happens? The card count goes up. Okay, you click that little plus icon and the number changed right there on the screen. So that right there, that's the whole idea of state. You interacted with something, in this case a plus icon, so that the value increases. The number of top should increase from 1 to 2. So that is what is happening through state. You interacted with something and the value updated in response. And when we compare the same thing with props, so with props the value never update on its own, and it is only read only. It is static and it just displays whatever it was handed. Okay, now, in today's lecture, we'll cover what state actually is, the use state hook, event handling, and how to use all of this together to build something that actually responds to clicks. But before that, let's look at the actual problem before we solve it. So you can see on the screen that there is a simple functional component that I made, and we declared a variable called count and initialized it to 0, right? Now we are returning some JSX inside this. So what I'm doing here is that I have set up an event handler so that when we click the button, the count go up by 1. But do you guys think that this would work? When I click the button, the count will increase. I want you guys to try this program and see it by yourself, that if the count is increasing or not. But you will see that the count won't increase. Let me tell you why. So make sure that you try it first. Okay, so let me tell you why it happens. It happens because count here is just a plain JavaScript variable, guys. See, every time this component would re-render, that line runs again and reset the count back to 0. And in React.js, we have to explicitly tell React that, hey bro, go re-render this component. So if we don't explicitly tell React.js that you have to, update the value, then even if you click the button 100 times, it will stuck at 0 forever. Okay. So how do we explicitly tell React that we have to update the value? For that, let's understand state a bit better, because it is through state that we update the value. But before jumping directly on it, let's try to understand state a bit better. We already, saw the shopping example, but now let's see another example. So think about a light switch in your house, and when you flip it on, the light turns on immediately, and when you flip it off, it turns off immediately, right? And you obviously don't have to rewire your entire house every time you want to turn the light on or off. Okay, so what is actually happening is that the switch remembers its current position. When you turn the switch on, or when you flip it on, that on position gets stored, and you flip it again, it updates to off, and the light responds accordingly. So obviously there is no rewiring needed, because in the memory it knows that whether it is on or off. Okay, and you can get an idea of the React state concept when talking about the light switch concept. And that is exactly how state behaves in React. As in case of light switch concept, the switch also remember its current position, okay, whether it is on or off. In the same way, the state remember its current value between renders, so that when we are updating something on screen, it knows its value, whether it is storing 0, 1, 2, and then it can update accordingly as per the logic. So now let's see what is useState. Okay. So useState is actually a hook or a special function that lets a plain functional component hold on to its own memory. Okay, the same idea. It needs to hold on to its memory so that we can update the values whenever we are performing any actions. Okay, so there is certain way to write this, and it has been described over here at the bottom. You can see that first we import useState from React, and then what we do is, over here you can see that we are calling useState, and we have passed the initial value. So this could be done before that, or it can be done along with the statement. So this value could be a number, a string, an array, object, or whatever you need. Okay, and this actually returns two things which we grab using array destructuring. So it is a current value that we define, and then a setter function. The setter function is needed to update this value. Okay, so this is a way we write this while coding. Okay, so now whenever we define an event, like say on click, that event is what actually triggers the state to update. Okay, we have to tell that when I click on this button, then the value should go up by 1. Okay, so in our counter example, let's say when we click the button, that click calls our setter function, then the state would update, and React automatically re-render the component to reflect the new value on screen. Hope you got this. Now, before we start coding, let's understand a few important rules to keep in mind when working with state and events. Okay, so here is rule number one, that is restructure the pair. You already know destructuring from video 2, right? Taking item out of the box and all that. So, same idea applies here. Use state always return two things, as I said in the previous slide, value and the setter. So, we are unpacking both at once, which is called array destructuring. Then rule number two is that we pass a function to on click. Why we do so? Because we have to tell that when I click on this button, then you have to update the value. Okay. So that is why we pass a function. Let's say like we are passing a function to on click. And please remember that you have to wrap it up in a function. Okay. Because if you don't wrap it up in the arrow function from here to here, then what will happen, React will run it immediately when the page loads, which doesn't make no sense, right? Because you want like when you are shopping, okay, so when you click on the plus icon, then you want that the value should go up from 1, right? And not when the page loads, when the website loads. That is why it is very important to define this arrow functions on this on click event handler, because it tells React that only run this when the click actually happens. Now let's see. Now let's see rule number 3. So rule number three is that we never mutate state directly. What I mean by this is that you cannot just write count plus plus or count equal to count plus one that you write in other programming language, and you cannot expect this like that by writing this that the screen should update. So this will not work if you write something like count plus plus or count plus one. Okay, you have to use the setter function in React in order to update the screen, because that is how we explicitly tell React. I already told you that we need something to explicitly tell React that you need to update the value. So that is why we are using this setter function over here, and we are telling that hey, this value changed and please update the screen. So set count and count plus one increases the value. Okay, I think it has been enough theory, guys, and let's actually write some code now. Before that, I think you remember the problem we ran into earlier, right? The problem I discussed, and the counter was not updating on screen. I told you to try it yourself. No matter how many times we click, the counter was not increasing. So how to fix that in React? How to explicitly tell React? We already discussed the concept that we tell React explicitly through useState. Now let's code and create a functional component called counter that will increase the counter. So let's go. So this is the same directory we were working on in the last video. Let's continue over here, and we'll make a new component and called it counter. And the program we are making is that every time we click on a button, let's say an increment button, the value should go up by one. Okay, let's do that. So the first thing we do is we import useState, because this is a concept through which we explicitly tell React that you need to update the screen. And in our scenario, we need to update the screen. Okay, now we have to make a functional component. Let's call it counter. And I already told you in the previous videos that it is a good practice to name the file and the functional component same, because it improves readability. Okay, now inside this functional component, we write const, then array destructuring. So let's call the value count, and a setter function. So set count. Now I want to initialize my count value with 0. So that value goes up from 0. Okay, so use state, and I'm defining the initial value with 0. Okay, now what I want to return is, let's make a div first. I'll display my current count. Every time I click on the button, the count value will be shown over here. Okay, now we need to make a button. Okay, right, because on clicking on the button the count value should go up. So we need to make a button, and then we'll specify an event handler. Okay, so it would be on click. Now we have to make an arrow function, because we want that when we click on the button, then only value updates. Okay, so here we have to define the setter function, and what we want to do is we have to increase the count value by 1, right? Okay, we already did that. Now let's label our button and called it increment. Okay, now to run the program we have to make other files available, make this component available to other files. So I need to import this component first. So let's export default counter. Okay, as I exported it, we need to import it somewhere, right? So let's import here, import counter. Okay, you can delete this lines from previous which we wrote in the previous video, and let's use our component. Okay, now let's go to our local host and see if we were able to make this. So yeah, you can see that there is an increment button, and here our initial value starting from 0. Now let's see what happens when I click on it. Okay, our value is successfully increasing by 1, right? Okay. Um, Now, what if I want to decrement this? Because in a shopping website, obviously there is also a minus icon which lets you, decrement the value by 1 also. So let's define it here as well. For this, what we'll do is we'll make another button. Then define this on-click event handler, make the arrow function, call the setter function, and just decrease the value of count by 1. We can label this button as decrement and then just close this button. And now just close this button. Okay. All right. Now let's see if we were able to make this button. Okay. You can see that this button has appeared. If I click on increment, the value goes up by 1. When I click on decrement, the value is decreasing, as you can see. Okay, now let's make another button that will reset the counter to 0 if I click on that. Okay. For that, what we'll do, try it yourself. I'll just copy and paste it. Try it yourself, guys, to reset it. I'm also doing, and try it yourself too. All right, I hope you tried. And what I did is to reset it, I just set the count to 0. So let's see if it works. Okay, we incremented, and when I click on reset, it's again back to 0. Okay.
Okay, so now let's look at another program, and now we look at a really common pattern, that is toggling a boolean value. This is based on the exact same idea, just with true and false, okay, instead of numbers. So one click and it will flip it to the opposite of whatever it currently is. And guys, this is a pattern behind things you see, like the like buttons, the drop down, and the dark mode switches. So let's get started and make another component. We'll call it like button.jsx. Okay. As we are updating the screen, we have to use the state concept. Okay. For that, we first import useState. Now we make a function like button. Now inside this function, I'll define the value and the setter through array destructuring, right? So let's call the value liked, and let's define the setter function as set liked. Okay, now let's initialize the value of liked. So use state, and we'll keep the initial value as false. Okay, we'll keep the initial value as false. Now what I want this function to return is on clicking a button, it should flip the value. Okay, so we'll create a button. I'll define the event handler on click. And now we'll use the arrow function because we want that when we click on the button, then only value updates. So we'll use the setter now, set liked. And what would be the logic, guys? See, I have to flip the value. Okay, I have to make false to true and then true again to false. So how can we do that? See, you must have read about the exclamation mark, which stands for not. So if I write over here not liked, then it will actually flip the value. What say? Let me make it clear by explaining it over here. See, our initial value of liked is false. Okay, I already wrote over here the initial value of liked is set to false. Okay, now when I click on a button, it should be not liked. Okay, so what is the value of liked? False. Not liked means not false, and anything which is not false is obviously true, because we only have two values of boolean, true or false. So anything which is not false will be actually true. Okay, so that is how we are flipping the value from false to true. Now that the value is again to true, that is in the second case when liked value becomes true, and when I wrote not liked, which means it is not true, and everything anything which is not true is obviously false. Okay, the same idea, because we have only two values, true or false, so anything which is not true is obviously false. Okay, so this is how we made the logic to flip the values. Okay, now we have to define a ternary operator to tell that if the value is true, then you have to display red heart, and if the value is not true, that is it is false, then you have to display a white heart. Okay, so we'll write liked, this is the condition, and if it is true, then we'll display a red heart. Now how to bring emojis? You have to click Windows and the full stop so together, and this will open this pad of emoji. Then you can choose a red heart icon and we'll display liked over here, and if the value is false, again you have to click on the Windows and the period, so liked, and then we'll just write like over here. Okay, so if the value if the condition is true, then we'll display a red heart with liked, and then if the condition is false, then we'll display a white heart. Okay, we have to close the button after this ternary operator. Okay, so we have to export the component to make it available to other files, right? So what we write for this, we write export default and then the component name, which is like button. Okay, now that we exported it, we have to import it as well. Okay, so now let's import this, import like button, then let's display it below the counter component. Okay, let's see if this code worked. So yeah, you can see that below this we created a like button, as you can see. I hope it is visible. Okay, so when I click on like, it turns into a red heart, and when I click again, the boolean value again flips. Okay, so you can see that the initial value we defined was false, that is why a white heart appears, because in the ternary operator statement we defined the false value to the white heart. Okay, so it started with the white heart, the initial value, and then when I clicked on again, it flipped the value to true, that is the red heart with the label liked. Okay, so yeah, we made two programs and we learned today about state and how to write program based on that. Okay, so let's quickly summarize everything we covered today. So we talked about state, and a state is a component's own memory. We covered the useState hook, that how it creates that memory and gives us a way to update it, right? Then we talked about events and how things like on click respond to what the user does. Then we covered the toggle pattern, that is flipping a boolean with exclamation mark and then value, which is the exact shape behind drop down models and dark mode. And finally, like we all together understood that props stay static while state changes. And you must remember that a plain variable is invisible to React, but state is not. So yeah, that's it for today's video, guys, and if this helped you understand state a little better, do hit that like button, try it out yourself, and subscribe if you haven't already, so you don't miss the next video. Also, there's an important thing that I want to share it with you guys, that I've been nominated for an award, and I'm dropping the link in description. Go have a watch, and if you think that my story is worth the support, then your like would mean a lot to me. So yeah, that's it from my side, and thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next part. Bye.